Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this session, How to Develop a Team of Sales Superstars. I'm Marcus Woodard, your producer, and we're happy you took the time today to join us. Now, we've got about over 900 people signed up for this webinar, so use the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from and what's your role. While you're doing that, I'll go through some housekeeping items. For attending today's webinar, those that provided a valid U.S. mailing address will receive a free copy of Mastering Virtual Selling, Orchestrating Sales Success, written by two of Allego's co-founders, Yu-Chun Lee and Mark McNacka, as well as sales guru Tony Geary. If you didn't provide your address, go ahead and do so through the questions tab or shoot me a DM in the chat, and I'll be sure to send you a book. At the conclusion of today's webinar, there is a brief 3-question survey that helps us keep improving these events. We value your feedback, so please take a moment to complete the survey. And this presentation is being recorded, and an on-demand recording will be emailed out later today, as well as any resources that we provide in the webinar. We have reserved time at the end of today's session for a Q&A, and you may submit those questions throughout using the chat or the questions tab in the Zoom interface. To make sure, if you're using chat, just make sure you change the drop down to everyone. I'm delighted to introduce today's speakers, Andy Springer, Chief Client Officer at Ring Group, and Bob Basiliere, VP of Sales at Allego. With that, Andy, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you very much, Marcus. Hello and welcome to everyone joining us. I know we have quite a few people from various different parts of the world. So I join Marcus in saying good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And I hope you get significant value out of our time together today. We're gonna work today on giving you tangible value, and I think that's the most important things. You've got to love those webinars where you turn up and you're pitched at for an hour. That's not the way we're going to roll for the next 60 minutes. Our aim is to give you concrete value, things that are tangible that you can take away. I know we have a lot of sales managers, sales leaders on the call here today, things that you can take away, put into practice within managing your teams to develop them into superstars. So that's the aim. We've got 58 minutes left, so let's get underway. Here are the things that we're going to cover on your screen today. I'm not going to labor those. They're fairly straightforward. We're going to run through some research. We're going to spend quite a bit of the front end of time talking about coaching, and I'll explain why that is as we get into the outputs of the research. We're going to talk about today's sales challenges. We're going to highlight ways in which we can help you overcome some of those. And Bob's got some great, not just research, but also some tangible and different thinking that you can apply in various ways to overcome those challenges. And we're going to help really focus on that, saving time and streamlining processes. And there's big reasons why. So this is very targeted to a lot of the challenges that sales managers share with us day to day. As Marcus said, my role is a Chief Client Officer with a company called the Ring Group. I like to position us often as researchers that then convert research into methodology, which then helps improve sales performance. And we do that in a variety of different ways. And a lot of that has to do with consulting, training, coaching, and development of sales teams in a lot of cases in mid-market and enterprise organizations around the world. So I am thrilled to put on screen our latest research report. It is an in-depth report. I had the privilege of co-authoring that with some of our wonderful research team and leadership here at Ring Group. Here is one of the questions we get asked is, who did you study? Who did you research? Well, you can see there the breakdown in terms of gross annual sales, in terms of industries and geographies that we researched around the world. And so it's a fairly even mix. A lot of enterprise mid-market, as I said, we do also research with smaller sales organizations and buyers as well. And we study both buyer and seller behavior and identify what we define as top performance in that space in which we are researching. What I wanted to do is share with you, without you having to read the report, what are the top 6 key findings that came and we shared in our in our executive summary in that report. And I'll just walk through those really quickly with you now, so you've got an understanding, and then I'll put a visual on the screen that makes it even more consumable for you. So we found that the rhythm roles and the type of conversations that top performing sales managers were having were very different to other managers. We found that effective management combined with coaching and training saw significantly outsized sales performance within those teams that were led by managers doing all three really well. Motivation became it was a real standout, particularly when it came to and linked to high productivity and performance within those selling environments. Confidence with inside a sales manager shone through as well. It showed it really mattered when we have great confidence being exuded from sales managers, the difference that it make. One of the things that is, I guess, mostly universal in our space, and I'm sure for a lot of you, is win rate. And if we focus a lot on our win rate and improving our win rate, often that means our team is winning as a whole. And by doing that, it indicates that our performance is improving. But we found there was a dramatic difference in win rate between those who were top performers versus the rest. And we found that newer sellers are getting performance boosts when an effective manager is being involved. Here's that visual. We built this into what we call now our top performing sales manager wheel. You'll see it's split in two, and there's 5 categories in each of the 2 areas, one being coaching, one being management. We're not going to spend our time here today talking about developing a team of sales superstars. Through the management items, I'm actually want to highlight what we define as the 5 coaching roles and why they play such a significant and important role when we're developing a team of sales superstars. Before we do that, what I'm going to do is jump into a poll. Really interested to hear from you. And once again, thank you for joining us. We've got a great turnout here today. Let's hear what's happening inside your organization when it comes to the cadence of coaching between your frontline sales managers and sellers at your organization. So do you deliver? Do your teams deliver or are involved in regular coaching sessions or not? Are the coaching sessions ad hoc in a minute? Or do we have a regular schedule that happens weekly, that happens bi-weekly, that happens monthly? What's happening inside your organization? So on your screen right now, select one of those 3, and that'll just give us an indication in terms of what's going on inside the selling organizations. Now, as you're doing that, one thing that often comes up when it comes to coaching, and the reason why I focus on that is one of the key differentiators between top performing sales teams and therefore developing a team of sales superstars versus the rest, is that 4-letter word that always comes up, which is, Andy, I don't have the time to coach my team. The demands on me in terms of target, in terms of complexity, in terms of market changes, product changes, service changes, all these things get in the way, and I just don't have the time. I've got a team of 8, I've got a team of 20. You know what? I'm a sales director. I've got a few hundred sellers rolling up to me. I don't have time to coach everyone. It's just not practical to do so. Interesting. I want you to hold on to that thought, and I want to see if you think differently in about 15 minutes time. All right, so what have we got here? We've got no regular coaching sessions. Let me bring that up. No regular coaching sessions. All right, so we've got 37% of our team who do have regular coaching sessions, either as individuals or have with their teams as sales managers. We've got no regular coaching sessions. So 1/5 have no regular coaching sessions in play at the moment, and then 44% have ad hoc or in-a-minute coaching sessions. As I said, thank you very much for sharing that. We're just getting a snapshot in terms of you as an audience and where you're at a moment in time. Okay, so, this is often what we hear. I know Bob and the Allego team, as well as the RAIN team, we have a global footprint. We're talking to selling organizations. We're involved. We're practicing and developing sales organizations around the world every single day. And so when it comes to coaching, it's often, my people are, they're all capable. They've been in their roles for years. I don't want to spend time developing, really seasoned professional sellers. They'll think that is remedial. We don't need to develop them. They're teaching me stuff, was someone said to me the other day. I don't know what I can teach them. And these are all the things that come through. And, I've told them everything I can tell them. What more should I be telling them? And they know where to find help. They know where to get information. These are the common responses that we get from coaches. But look at the difference. So we study those who are top performers in their field, and this focus of the study at sales management. So very relevant to a lot of you on this call here today. I know a lot of you either are or could be on your way to, or certainly have an aspiration to be a top performing sales manager. So here's the difference that coaching made from our most recent study. So there is a significant difference between top performance and the rest when it came to regular, ongoing coaching rhythm. So as you can see there, top performers, 51% more likely to receive a regular schedule of coaching. So if you've come to a webinar about developing a team of sales superstars, there is your first insight in terms of what happens in top performing sales teams that are full of sales, superstars that have been developed by their sales managers. What is an example of coaching rhythm? Here's that first example where I said we're going to give you tangible value here today. You can't say you don't know, because you can now take a screenshot right now in terms of if I'm one of the 20% on this call, or I'm one of the 44%. So if I'm one of the 64% that either have no coaching or that's happening in my team, or I have intermittent or ad hoc coaching, here is a way, here is the how in terms of what you do to set up a coaching rhythm. You've got daily, and what do I do there? Well, I can do a 10-minute check-in with key people. I can run huddles where I can combine and get everyone, and we can talk about what's our key focus today. In our team, we talk about GIA. What is our greatest impact activity or greatest impact activities that I'm going to do today? What is most important? Getting people to focus on most important each day in terms of their selling activities has a profound difference from asking that one question: what is most important today? Once you start hearing where your sellers are focusing their efforts and thinking about what's most important, in some cases, and depends on your team, in a lot of cases, it could be there's a coaching opportunity right then and there from asking that one question, getting one response at a huddle from each seller each day. Why? You can guide activity very quickly and coach the direction of sales activity very quickly by doing that in a daily huddle. You've got your various different weekly meetings that we suggest. You've got accountability checks. You've got win labbing. Win labbing is something that's essential. We're not going to talk about it here today. Rain has published lots of information about win labs. Win labs are about getting the best and the best ideas to help advance your sales opportunities towards win. That is about improving win rate and helping you win more often. So win labbing is a great opportunity to coach and review deals on their way towards being won. And of course, you've got your sales meeting. You've got your pipeline reviews, you've got core coaching, you've got plan reviews, you've got quarterly summaries. It's all fairly straightforward. But a lot of the first questions we get is, well, if I'm going to coach, what do I do? And how do I set up that rhythm? It's on your screen right now. We're going to move on in the interest of time. Top performers prioritize coaching. So they make it a focus. And you look at the difference here between elite performers, top performers, and the rest. So there was a group that really stood out even above top performers. And what they focused on was maximizing seller motivation and making sure that their sales coaching was prioritized, not just by the seller, but by them as themselves. They made it a key priority in terms of what they do. A lot of people say, well, I'm a really good sales manager, so therefore I'm automatically a great sales coach. Well, actually, the two are very different. It's a different skill set. It's a different focus. Just because you're really good at managing things doesn't mean you're great at coaching people. And so one of the things that we hear about, and you can see the difference and the descriptors on your screen at the moment, this is what we hear. We hear this a lot. And so Harvard actually gave us this quote, and we sit there, and a lot of us are going to resonate when we hear this. When thousands of managers are asked to coach someone, they say they simply provided the other person with advice or a solution. And we regularly heard comments like, first you do this, or why don't you do this? So let's just pause for a sec. That is not coaching. That is not coaching. First of all, if someone seeks out advice from someone else who's been in a position where they've done it before, that's mentoring. Nothing wrong with mentoring, but we just need to know the different roles that are at play here. And so coaching is not about someone asking for advice and then you providing it. That's mentoring. And it's not about saying, hey, you should do this, or why don't you do that? That's instructing. And that's telling someone what to do. The problem with that is, other than getting the job done or someone moving in a particular direction to complete an activity or a task, no learning has been achieved there. Why? The learning and the knowledge is still with the person that's giving it, and that in a lot of cases, that's you, the sales manager. So if we're going to develop superstars through our coaching, then we need to understand what coaching really is. Here's another one. Telling people what we think of their performance doesn't actually help them thrive and excel, and telling them how they think they should improve actually hinders their learning. Isn't that amazing? Some of you are sitting here right now and you've just read that and gone, whoa. That's perhaps where the missing link is. Perhaps that's why all of my sellers keep coming back to me every day and asking me to think for them. And that's a big point. If you really understand, it's quite profound. It's simple to understand, but it's profound in terms of the impact that it can have. The greatest performers, the ones that develop the superstars, and most superstars in their selling teams, ask the most questions of their sellers. Why? Because question asking creates thought and thinking, and then owning the outcome of that thinking creates learning and development. And that is the starting point of developing a team of sales superstars, is stop telling them. You may have been the greatest player on the field when you're a seller. And the challenge is, you're not playing on the field, and you can't play on the field every day. Some days you can coach, you can be infield coaching, you can be observing as a coach, you're still playing the role of a coach. You can't be doing the doing. You've got to enable your team to do the doing. The challenge is, how do you enable them? How do you develop that team of superstars? You've got to coach them. How do you do that? You've got to ask questions, and you've got to be patient. Patience is actually the thing that gets in the way most when it comes to the difference between top performing sales managers and the rest. The impatient of the rest, their win rate lower, their sales performance and their team's performance are lower. We saw a massive and profound impact to those who had effective sales coaching skills versus the rest, and how that catapulted them into the category of sales top performing sales managers. So coaching is key. It takes patience, and it starts with asking questions rather than making statements. So leading valuable coaching conversations, critically important. Top performers, 40% more likely to be skilled at leading valuable coaching meetings. So if you want a development area for yourself as a sales leader over the next 6 months, over the next 12 months, in order to be able to develop that team of sales superstars, why not think about developing your own skills as a sales coach? It has the biggest impact when it comes to sales team development and sales team performance improvement. And a lot of that has to do with you on the call, developing your sales coaching skills. Leading valuable conversations, another one for those of you who really want tangible value and want to start right now. Well, how do I start having those valuable coaching conversations, Andy? Well, there's 3 very simple steps you can do within that time period we've put there. If you want to spend 60 minutes starting to develop your people, here's the type of conversation. What have you did? You know, what have we done? Like, so if we look at did is all about in reverse. What's happened over the last week or so? Let's check in. What's up? Let's look at what we promised versus what we delivered. What are we going to be doing is all about now in the future. So we spend 40 minutes on coaching, asking questions, leading the coachee, leading the seller to outcomes that they create. And they create that through their own thinking. Now, it's interesting to note that in consistent studies over many decades when it comes to human performance, no matter how much you even tell someone to go and do something, they're often going to do what they were going to do anyway. So if we don't start asking questions and guiding people to think on their own, come to their own conclusions, we're still not going to influence their ultimate behavior, because they're going to go and do what they were going to do that wasn't going to work anyway in a lot of cases. So it's really important we ask those questions. We've got to stay patient here. That's why you got 40 minutes in the doing and the shaping of the thinking through asking the right coaching questions. And then what are we going to do? So did, past, doing, shaping the future. Do, we're now guiding specific action. So set the action plan and move forward. There you go. You've got a way to start leading valuable conversations straight away. Coaching to build sales skills. 33% of top performing sellers strongly agree that their manager excels at coaching sellers in building their sales skill. That one speaks for itself. And then when you dig into the report, look at all the different sales skills and look at the difference of those who are coached and those who are coached either ad hoc or not at all in terms of the development of their sales skills, and the difference between effective management and or top performing sales managers versus the rest. You can see it in these numbers here. It is a stark contrast. We need to be coaching to build sales skill. So one of the key areas that we can do that is assessing the status quo and creating a coaching plan for our teams. So there's doing now, there's doing differently, and the impact that it can have. This is a case here as to what should my team be doing differently. So this is a process that you can undertake. This is something that you can begin thinking about. Doing now, do differently, and the impact that it's going to have. And you can see that there is profound gains that can be made in terms of identifying where we are at the moment and then creating a coaching plan to fill those gaps. You'll see more content on the screen right now that will help those of you who want to get started. How will my coaching different? What will I change to make my coaching more effective? What about the success metrics? How are you going to measure the progress that you're going to make in your coaching of your team to know that you are actually having success in all of that? So these tools are not things that are going to be the best done on screen right now. You can head to the Rain Group website. There is a huge volume of free tools that you can download to begin understanding what top performing sales coaching skill looks like, how it comes to life inside your selling environment. And there are example plans that you can bring to life in doing that. My final thought before I introduce Bob to you, and Bob can build on and add even more value to what we've just shared, is this. One of the best ways to develop sellers and identify gaps to coach them through is to run simulations. You know what? It's really embarrassing. And I, many moons ago in my sales management days when I was running a team, obviously we're running a target. You go out to those meetings and you do a sit-in, you go on the road and do some observations with your sellers in terms of how they show up. And you realize sometimes when you're in that meeting and it's all going pear-shaped, it's not working, that you wish you could extract that seller out right now and just go, hey, how do you think this is going? What do you reckon we can do to improve it? What are the things that we need to, that need to happen here in order for us to realize a more successful outcome in this meeting? You can't do that. A lot of cases, you've got to watch the train wreck unfold in front of you. And essentially what you're asking is, if you start jumping in now and coaching, you're coaching on your client or future customers' time. And it's just messy. I mean, and even when the sales manager jumps in and saves the day, the buyer's always obvious and aware of it. It erodes confidence and it makes everyone look bad and not feel good about what's going on. We can't be using live selling time as practice time. And the bar is set much higher. from a buyer's perspective today in terms of what they expect. So we do need to be coaching, and we need to be coaching sales skill, and we need to be coaching it, in the office or virtually when we're outside of the live selling environment. So you need to have some as close to real life examples in your kit bag, and you need to run simulations as if they're selling to you or selling to someone else who's playing the role of the buyer, and they're seeking an outcome. And we want to be observing, well, what questions are they using in their discovery? How are they guiding? How are they guiding the conversation to get to the outcome? How are they uncovering impact, and how are they building a ROI case as they're talking? How are they positioning the value that we can bring rather than solutioning too early in the conversation? How are they engaging with existing customers and actually seeking to bring value based on what they know and the intelligence they've gathered as an account manager to try and develop new business that's win-win? We get the opportunity to observe that, but often you'll see it when you simulate it. You can identify the gaps much quicker. The challenge that we found is, and we just rolled out, we did a 160 simulation rollout in a global sales team. The data that came back at an individual, at a team, at a regional, at a global level was just astounding. The global sales director and regional VPs were like, oh my gosh, we have the blueprint in terms of how we develop our selling organization, and we literally have all of the gaps understood in terms of how to do that. And so it got to a point where they created 160 individual coaching plans and fed that down to the sales managers in each of the regions to develop, and they're holding them accountable. It's fantastic, great. The challenge is they now want their sales leaders to run more role plays, more simulations more often. And the scaling part of it by doing it manually or engaging a RAIN group to come in every time and do it, it's cost prohibitive. So we then started looking at, well, that's the high touch part, but we've got to look at how we can scale this more effectively, and how do we do that using technology? And that is where we are partnering with the likes of Allego, who have really great development solutions in their kit bag, built into their technology, that are enabling us to help scale these types of coaching simulations with inside selling environments to make it cost appropriate, not cost prohibitive. So what I want to do right now is I kind of want to pause from the high touch stuff, and let's shift gears to high tech around how we develop a team of sales superstars. And I'm going to introduce Bob. I hope that's a good segue to you, Bob. I know you've got some valuable information to share with us, and I'll hand it to you before I come back for questions.
Fantastic, Andy, thanks. So I'm sure any of you who are sales managers or observing sales managers do their job, or are sellers themselves and thinking about, does my sales manager do these things for me? When you see the thought process that Andy just laid out for you quickly, you have to understand that there are sales managers everywhere who think they know how to coach. And Andy's point that great players, and often the best salespeople are often promoted to sales management, but great players are rarely great coaches, because the skill of coaching requires the same sort of skills they developed when they were becoming great sellers. So what we want to take you through now is just pick up where we left off. And bear with me, I'm going to share presentation here. Okay, let me get this into the right mode. Here we go. Andy took you through what is really a blueprint, what is a cadence for the way sales managers need to think when they're coaching their teams. And something he said is the first and most often heard challenge we hear from sales managers when we mention the topic of coaching, and that is time. Because whether it's ride-alongs, which people were forced to do for years and years before we had great technology, or whether it's sitting face-to-face with a seller, virtually or in person, and walking through the act of coaching, it takes tremendous time. And what are we coaching them on? It assumes that a coaching session assumes that we've listened to or heard something about their performance that we need to address during a coaching session. So we're going to take you through the technology applied to coaching, just to open up ways that we can solve for time, ways that we can solve for the repeatability of a great cadence, and the ability to coach in a meaningful way based on a lot of the content that Andy just gave you from the RAIN group. So a couple of facts from the Burson Deloitte learning team. 1% of the work week is typically spent on improving by sales teams. Why? Because we're too busy selling. How do we replace sales time with learning time? It's difficult. You have to be disciplined. 70% of enablement content is never used. We talk about enablement content because a lot of the content that enablement teams, marketing teams, even sales operations teams, product teams provide to sellers, it is to enhance performance with the customer. It's to help us deliver the right message, deliver it better than we would have otherwise, update on markets, update on products, update on services. A lot of enablement content never gets to the seller in the form they need it in so that they can use it. And then lastly, 45% of managers say they spend only about 30 minutes a week coaching. And you can bet, as Andy said, a lot of that coaching time is probably just one-on-one meetings. And how do you carve out during a one-on-one how much of that time is being spent on coaching? So there's readiness, there's content elements of this, and yes, then there is coaching. This continuum for sellers of whether I'm new or experienced, I've learned something, I prepare myself to be great at messaging that, positioning that, conveying that to a customer or client in whatever industry I'm in. In the midst of that, hopefully there's some form of coaching and feedback that I get as I am working through learning and readiness and preparing. And then I also want to talk to you about what happens in actual meetings. So much of our selling today is done in this hybrid selling mode, and therefore so much of it is done virtually. Because we do so much selling via conference, it gives us the opportunity to use technology to record and use recordings of actual customer conversations to work on coaching in a virtual way. And I'll take you through that a little bit. All right, so let's take a look at the how. What role can technology play? If you applied what Andy just gave us to a technology scenario, we can literally apply those best practices and those capabilities and that guidance and advice to the use of technology in a coaching scenario. Allego is one of the top global enablement platforms. It is, as an enterprise platform, capable of a number of things that drive sales effectiveness. One of those things, and one of our earliest core technologies in the platform, was the ability to coach. And as you can see on the screen, we use video. We use embedded video of both sellers and managers and of actual customer conversations to enhance sales effectiveness and enhance the ability to coach, not just on core messages presented as slides, but how did the person look? What was their cadence? What words did they use that we liked and didn't like? How fast did they speak? How slow did they speak? Did they hit on key messages that they just learned? Or did they stick to the kind of selling that they've been doing for tens of years? Coaching can address amazing things when we have technology layered on top of the best practices of the RAIN group. So in that continuum, preparing, checking my knowledge, simulating how I would actually perform in front of a customer, the execution of that meeting or conversation, and then reviewing it for improvements. All of these things can be done through the use of these great new technologies, including things like simulation We now have the ability, this used to take tremendous cost and tremendous time to build simulators where a seller could actually have a meaningful conversation in a simulated environment. We now do that easily and quickly and flexibly in this technology. Preparing, we have learning and guided learning programs for every level of seller and in every industry and in every market. And the technology provides the capability to customize to the seller's particular experience level or the particular product or service that they're selling and how learning is best applied to it. So let's talk about the word asynchronous. What if in any one of those steps on the previous slide, any one of these, what if a seller could go into a system on mobile, on their desktop, system looks exactly the same, wherever they are, whatever they have access to, and simulate or practice for a minute a message that they need to deliver in a meeting 2 days from now. And when they do that, what if they could share that with their manager and have the manager view that, again, asynchronously, so the seller can record themselves delivering this key message, send it to the manager. Hours later, the next morning, the manager could quickly view that video of the seller delivering that key message, and in line, as you see, in line, give them comments as to how they can improve that before the meeting takes place. We would refer to that as just-in-time coaching. And when Andy took you through the cadence and the hours required and the summary of those hours required to actually have a plan for effective coaching, we'd insert this kind of coaching for ad hoc required coaching to improve the effectiveness of a meeting before it happens. What if a new product gets rolled out, a new service gets rolled out, a major change happens in your market, a major change in the economy leads to the requirement for every seller, experienced and new, to change the message or change a position about your product or service. And they need to do it right away because the market changes are happening all the time. And the product changes and the service changes may not happen on schedule every quarter. So as the company rolls something out, they need to get it into the hands of the seller right away, have them consume it, but then practice how they will deliver that concisely to a customer. What if they could go into a system, record themselves, maybe record themselves 2, 4, 10 times before they're happy with that 2-minute delivery, submit that to their manager, and again, asynchronously have the manager view that submitted message and coach them. Then have the seller able to go back in, view those comments real time. And by the way, the manager can type their comments, they can record their comments just using audio, or they can record their comments using video. Right in the same video file that the seller originally submitted. Hugely powerful, because when we do it asynchronously, we're not depending on people finding time on a Zoom or Teams call necessarily, or certainly not sitting next to each other, but they can perform better coaching and make better use of time because we do this asynchronously. There's a lot more to this, but just think about the effectiveness of this when we think about coaching. Now, as Andy said, we never really want any of our sellers practicing in front of the customer, right? We shouldn't settle for sellers practicing in front of the customer, particularly when most of your companies spend time and money and effort in learning and reinforcement programs, only to then stop the film after the seller is hopefully prepared, and we never really see how they actually perform unless the manager's in that sales call. Well, now with conversation intelligence, a key part of coaching, when the customer agrees to allow the call to be recorded, the system can come back in, just like it can in submitted rehearsals of great message and positioning, by the way. The system can come back in, automatically transcribe the call, and through that transcription and the use of keywords, advise the manager on how that call went. Not just how long it took, how often was the seller talking and the customer talking? How many questions did the seller ask? How many questions did the customer ask? What were the keywords the manager would be looking for in that call, and were those words used? Good or bad words, as it applies to the message, the product, the service. So virtual coaching, both during practice and during live calls, is another way of honing for the manager the things that they want to coach on over the course of an hour-long meeting, perhaps. In this example that's on the screen, what if the manager only wants to coach on something that the system told them needs addressing, and it was 5 or 10 minutes of an hour-long meeting? The technology is capable of all of this today. So those teachable moments can be pulled out of the conversations by the system using great analytics, using great teaching of the technology so it knows what to listen for, and enhance the overall time required for managers to do more coaching and more precise coaching every day. Conversation intelligence integrated into the same platform that teaches my sellers, provides them with guided learning, provides them with launch materials and content that they use every day as they adapt their selling to the markets, to new products, to new services. Incredibly powerful when you integrate all this into one technology. I mentioned earlier this idea of simulation, and now with the latest versions of the technology, the simulation is done really cost effectively, but also incredibly flexibly without long video sessions in studios. So what if I could practice objection handling for a call center, or for an inside sales team, or for a really experienced outside sales team that has to handle a serious objection that just came up in the market or just came up with regards to our companies or our markets or our products? This can all be done during simulations, and then the reinforcement of all that can be done through, in this case, what's showing on the screen is something called a flash drill, where the sellers are sent randomly over the course of their day a question to answer or an exercise to run through that is a minute long, but over time does an excellent job of not only reinforcing their learning so they're better in the moment with a customer, but also gives the managers an idea of how well someone is improving in specific areas that have been coached on. The technology overlaying the great practice, again, is something that we're after. One of the things that Andy touched on, and we deal with all the time, all of us, we deal with it all the time, is who do we coach? If we have limited time, even laying technology on top, how do we deal with decisions to coach top performers, or the good, steady run rate performers, or the lower performers? You know, there's this rule in sales that usually holds that about 20% of our people are great and the best at what we do. The middle group is 60% of our sellers who can be great at times, but aren't consistently performing the way we'd want them to. And then 20% are the low performers. And the question is always, where do we spend our time? Well, if it's limited time, the technology allows you to stretch those boundaries a bit and maybe spend a little bit of time with, by the way, the lowest performers aren't always the best place to invest your time. Best place to invest your time is typically with that middle 60% to get them up to the 20% of the best. But a lot of the technology can use the actual performance of that great 20% as examples and as shared best practices with everybody else. but the point is the technology can allow you to address more of the group with great coaching. Here's the dialogue simulator that I was referring to. Very simple framework of programming the simulator with natural language, really intuitive dialogue cadence to allow not an avatar, an actual human interacting with a seller and the system responding to what the seller is saying before it gives its next comment, before it gives its next challenge statement, before it gives its next objection for the seller to respond to. And then yes, recorded, analyzed by the system, delivered to the manager in a way that they can hone in on the parts of that exercise that they need to spend time coaching on later on. Right? Incredibly powerful stuff. You know, I think underneath everything Andy said was this idea that if you build a framework and get disciplined about how much time your managers are spending coaching, you're gonna eliminate over time the variations. People doing it the way they did it 5 or 10 years ago, people who don't know how to do it at all, trying to wing it and understand coaching while they're in, you know, sessions with their sellers and learning on the fly. When we have virtual coaching overlaying all of these, both learning, practice, reinforcement, and then live customer meetings, when we have virtual coaches overlaying all of that, the managers by definition are made better because the system applies a consistency that just can't exist without it. So we want to leave time for Q&A. We've got a little over 10 minutes left. Fire away with anything you saw that you're curious about. I know the technology needs a deeper level of understanding, sort of get the pieces together in your mind the way I just took you through them. We'd obviously love to tell you more and show you more.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Andy. Go ahead and get your questions in right now, either through the questions tab or chat. We did have a couple come through, so let's see here. This one's from Mark. He said, ways to hold sellers accountable. What are some ways to hold sellers accountable? I think that one's for Andy.
I'm happy to have a go at that.
Yeah.
So Mark, I think it's a great question. I think it's a very common question because it is one of the great challenges that sales managers have. And you know, we talk in terms of the two dynamics that play always in both how buyers buy and how sellers sell. One is rational, one is emotional. Sellers, even technical sellers, and we work with a lot of technical sellers, they're still human beings that feel. So I think what this comes down to a couple of things. What I'm going to share with you, and hopefully this resonates with you and the other sales managers who are struggling with this, because at some point, most people in a management position are going to tell you they struggle with the exact same thing. How do I hold people accountable? In this case, we're talking about sellers. So what happens is this: there is a voice inside everyone's head, right? And it is often known as the self-critic. It is known as the voice that tells us often what we should be doing, even when we're not doing it. And that voice, depending on how tuned in the person is to it, can be really loud, or it can be encouraged to be louder. Either way, we can influence that voice. The worst thing we can do is tell a seller that they're bad, that they're no good, that they're failing. All of that is not a way to hold someone accountable. It actually creates the opposite outcome that we're looking for, which is performance improvement. So for any seller, any sales leader who's out there, and by the way, any parent who's out there, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The minute we start telling someone what they haven't done, how bad it is, that's negative, that's failing. We're actually moving the situation in the wrong direction. Comes back to what I said, patience and really good question asking. So in your coaching conversations, let's say we have them at the beginning of each week or the beginning of every second week, the accountability piece starts and ends with what they said they were going to do and us holding them positively accountable to doing it and not letting them off the hook of what they said they were going to do. It's as simple as that. Because what you're doing is you're encouraging that voice inside their head to say, what we really should have done that. We really need to make time to do this. This is not, I can't turn up next week and not have this done. Right? That's what we want the voice saying is consistently is don't make promises to my manager I can't keep. Because guess what? Each week or each second week or every other day, they're going to be asking me. And all you've got to do is keep asking the questions. How are you going with such and such? What's the progress on such and such? Have we closed off such and such? Don't change your tone, just keep repeating. That's the big challenge for most sales managers, is they don't want to sound like a broken record. Trust me, the best thing you can do is be a broken record, because guess what happens is you're conditioning the minds of your sellers, and over time, they will already be asking that question automatically in their head. What did I promise? What question are they going to ask me? And I need to make sure that I'm going to be able to ask that question. The second thing I'll give you is what we call group-based accountability. So effective sales meetings, you can say this, right? What are the top 3 things that you're going to do this week to advance your selling outcomes? And then at the beginning of the meeting the following week, you have that on the screen and you say, Simon, here are the 3 things that you said you're going to do. Tell us how you went. Sarah, here are the 3 things you're going to do. Tell us how you went. If they are accountable to a group, it multiplies the level of accountability that you can create without you having to do anything else. Why? They don't want to disappoint the team. A team dynamic in accountability is even more powerful than a dynamic of accountability with a single sales manager. I'm going to pause there, throw it to Bob. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. The only thing I'd add, and I know there's some other questions we want to get to, is systems drive accountability. Now, you probably have people who are top performers who would say, I don't need that coaching, or I don't need to participate. To those people, we would say, help us manage the people who do need it. So there are ways with the systems and certainly in Allego to have peer reviews or peer content provided to others as a way to demonstrate great performance. And so everybody gets involved, everybody feels like they're contributing, everybody becomes accountable. But there's probably more to that. Marcus, what other questions do we have here?
Sure, yeah. Next question would be, any tips on getting subject matter experts to record themselves with those videos and create the content?
God, we love that. I can tell you in some of the major industries that we service, financial services and med device and high tech, the subject matter experts who are typically these very experienced product leaders and marketing leaders, they love to record short versions of themselves delivering the position on a particular product, feature, service, anything that sellers need to learn and be able to repeat, and then share that with sellers. Again, not once a quarter or on some other cadence or just at the beginning of the year during sales kickoff, but whenever the market or the product or the need arises. It's a simple process when you use the technology. They love it. Yeah.
This is actually a good one too. Advice for avoiding that feeling of micromanaging when checking in to coach so often. How do you do that?
Yeah, Andy, what do you think? What do you think of that?
So
one?
I think so. Micromanaging is a mindset. Is the first thing I'll throw out there, because if someone is getting value from what you have to offer, they're going to want more of it. So what part of what you're offering is not aligning to the value that they need? That's the first question I'd be asking, is let's define what it is that the coachee wants and what is defined as value to them, and how do we then define it? How do we make sure in our coaching rhythm and our cadence that we're delivering that value to them? The other thing I'll say is, because I think that the question that you might come back is, well, what happens if the gaps that they want to work on are different to the gaps that I've observed we should be filling? Great question, by the way. It is often that we then need to ask permission to share feedback and observations and have them understand our position and what we're seeing. And so feedback, by the way, for those of you, and I know there's some newer sales managers on here, feedback is always best given through observation. So here's what I've observed. And by the way, never give secondhand feedback. Always encourage others who are seeing things to give the feedback in a positive way directly rather than through you as a sales manager. Bob, I'll let you build on that.
Yeah, just coming right off what Andy just said, here's what I've observed. Again, the ability to observe asynchronously how someone's performing, either during practice or during actual customer calls, is amazingly powerful for managers. And the system can help you in as I said, an hour-long sales call to narrow down to the things that need to be coached on. With regard to micromanaging, yeah, I would echo what Andy said. And as the great cadence is built and it becomes repeatable and predictable for the sellers, they feel less, they feel like these are things that they can anticipate each week that are going to help their performance and help them make money. And then we drop into that some of this just-in-time coaching that I described, where I've got the biggest meeting of the quarter in 2 days. Here's how I'm going to open it. Here's what I'm going to say. Can you give me a little feedback on that to help me refine and perform better in that meeting? No one's going to feel like they're micromanaged if they're asking for help.
There's a couple questions here on the 5 to 10 minutes a day of learning that you talked about. It looks like Peter sets aside calendar on his calendar, that time to coach or learn. But what is the best technique to convince sales leaders to set aside those 5 to 10 minutes a day for learning?
I'm just in the time. I'm going to say for those of you who haven't been there yet, hit up the RAIN website. There are so many downloadable tools on sales productivity, performance improvement, time, where we spend our time as sellers. I just say hit that up. I can't. There's no way I can cover that in 3 minutes. I'll just go to the
and I would reinforce. You saw Andy's research. How can you not set the time aside when you know that it has this direct correlation to better performance and therefore better business performance? How can you not?
And by the way, as much as I'd like to claim I publish everything and put it out there, one of our team, Ali, who's on the call here today, make sure that we keep everything up to date on my LinkedIn. I'm sure Bob's got the same with the Allego team. Like we pump out free resources and research and insights and observations through LinkedIn. That would be another one to stay plugged in with us, because we're always sharing our observations in terms of what we're seeing in field from a technology and from a practitioner standpoint. That would be another source. Just stay plugged in with us. We'll keep adding value to your world as much as we can.
Yes, and Rona, I think if I pronounce your name right, just that last quick question. Yes, we deal with partnership teams all the time and deal with companies who are selling through channels and trying to help that indirect seller, if you will, perform like they worked for your company. So yeah, all this applies to channels as well.
Great. Well, just a reminder, there will be an on-demand recording. We're going to send out that research to you as well as the PowerPoint slides for you to take a look at. There is a 3-question survey at the end. Make sure you fill that out. It'll only take a couple minutes. And a special thanks to Andy and Bob. Appreciate you guys joining us. And any last words here?
I would say to that one question, there are no born sellers. Sales is a process. It's not an art form. No one's born to sell. It's a learned skill. Anyone can learn it, and coaching is vital to everybody.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think just building off what I said and what Bob said, you can't afford not to coach and develop your team. So you must find time for that. So what is most important is the development. And so what else that you have on your schedule can you look at and go, I need to replace that with the development of my team. And by the way, there's a question there about Spanish. Yes, I think we all certainly deliver in Spanish. So happy to follow that up.
Hope everyone in Florida is safe. I know there were a few people. Stay safe down there.
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining us. And that concludes our webinars. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Great to be with you.